Welcome back to the Metro on 1019 WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Maybe the greatest joy for a child is that magical morning moment where they look outside and see a bunch of snow. And yes, it is a snow day. Parents turn on the local news. You, as a kid, you see your school district's name pop up on the school closings list, and it's time to jump up for joy. It's time to do a little dance. It's time to feel so relieved. But nowadays, the nostalgic snow day moment, it feels a little different, especially for us adults. School days seem to be called before a storm even hits. On some snow days, there are only a few inches of snow. We're paying attention to this now as adults, curmudgeon adults who still have to go to work.
I brought on snow boots today. That's right. You know, Robin, I remember being at MSU during one of the first official snow days called in like a 30-year span. And we knew beforehand it was coming, and the Spartans will take advantage of leisure time. We had a lot of fun. Wink, wink. We had a lot of fun.
Nudge, nudge.
Nudge, nudge. Spartans know how to party. And we're joined right now by Metro producer David Lyons, who has been shoveling a clear path through this particular story. Dave, why are we talking about snow days?
Well, we've had a couple of winter weather storms, or supposedly they were supposed to be storms over the past week. And the forecast, I remember last week we were all talking, Are we gonna have snow days on Thursday and Friday? A lot of schools were canceled last week on Thursday or Friday, and then we were supposed to get a whole bunch more snow this weekend. Yeah. And I don't know about you all, but if you have any friends with kids in school, they probably gripe to you like, why do they keep calling snow days when there's not snow? This was a shock to me. The reason that we're talking about it is because I was so shocked at how different people feel about snow days. I always cheer for snow days. Yes, my wife works in public schools, and therefore she gets a day off, and that's great. But I just think it's great for kids. I'm with the nostalgia side. I remember putting on those snow pants. Once you see that name come across your district, you go, that's it, snow day. I'm going outside, I'm making a fort, and I'm doing it all day long. I remember climbing up in pine trees, throwing snowballs at my friends when they walk by. I mean, it's just like the greatest memories you have. But I wonder, is that going away? Are snow days what they used to be? I'm not sure if they are, because nowadays it's not like that morning of surprise. It's the day before you often find out there's going to be a snow day, and then there's not even snow for the snow day. And I don't know, as adults, we do look at it differently when we have to come to work, because the radio, we don't get to take snow days, do we?
We do not, but this does have me feeling a little sad for kids who don't get to experience that edge of your seat suspense.
Mm-hmm. Just watching that ticker go by. You know, rest in peace to Al Allen from Channel Fox 2 News, because that was one of the things that my mom would watch in the morning, and Al Allen would be right there, and you would just see those names scrolling across the bottom of the screen, hoping, just praying, please, please, please. And there it was. And like you said, Dave, I'm grabbing my snow boots, the pants, the whole entire get up, and we're outside.
That's right.
We're outside.
And then you're coming back inside for some cocoa.
And some cocoa.
At some point.
And some warming up. But we do want to find out what goes into calling snow days. And the basic question is to call or not to call. That is the snow day question. So, Dave, you've been doing some shoveling through this topic. What are we going to be exploring?
Yeah, so tried to boil it down to kind of what the main ingredients of a snow day are so we could better understand what's going on and what's changing. There's the schools. The superintendents are the ones who make that decision, and we want to know what goes into that decision. So we spoke to a superintendent. We want to know about the roads and how we clear them, how hard that really is, and how timing works into that, because Southeast Michigan has a ton of roads, a lot more than up north counties that might not have as many snow days called so easily. And then, of course, it's climate and weather. We need to really understand, are we getting more or less snow than we used to? With warming temperatures, is that snow just going to be slushy rain? Is it going to be wintry mix? So we've got a climatologist joining us today, too. So I'm really excited about that.
Thank you so much, Dave. And I don't have a pun right now to have you, exit out of this conversation, so I wish I did. Do you have a pun?
Skate out of this studio, please.
Okay,
That's all
thanks.
I've got.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for the chili reception. I'm out.
And we do want to hear from you, though. So if you are listening right now, which we know you are, does it seem like snow days are called too easily nowadays? The phone number is 313-577-1019. What are your thoughts about snow days? And let's get to the roads. Living in southeast Michigan means in the winter, we keep an eye on the weather. And when ice and snow hit, hoping the salt and plow trucks get out on the roads before you do. When a big storm is predicted, we do try to plan accordingly.
That's right. And an important part of the snow day equation is road conditions. Can buses and parents get kids to school safely? That all depends on the snow, the ice, and very importantly, the timing of it all. Joining us now to help better understand how the roads get cleared when a winter storm hits is Craig Bryson, Senior Manager of Communications for the Oakland County Roads Commission. Craig, thanks for joining us on the Metro.
Thanks for having me.
So first and foremost, a very important question. Craig, do you remember having snow days as a kid?
It seemed like very rarely, much more rarely than we have today, in my recollection.
Why do you think that is?
You know, I think really we hear about this so often. We live in an instant gratification society. People want the roads cleared immediately, and we're kind of a victim of our own success. I think we've become better at clearing the roads than we were, say, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And people expect that they will be instantly clear. And frankly, we don't have as many big storms as we used to have. So it's less often that we have heavy snows. And when we have them, people want them cleared immediately. And if they're not, they don't want to be troubled with going out or having their children go out in the snow. That's my personal take on it.
Okay, so you think it has to do with a slower, simpler existence that meant less snow days?
And higher expectations, I think, today. I think maybe 30, 40 years ago when we got a snowstorm, people expected, everything to slow down. People expected it to take time to clear up and that, businesses would be closed, schools would be closed for major snowstorms. Today, it seems, based on the interaction that we have with the public, that people expect, you could have the biggest snow in the world, but people expect business to carry on as normal. They don't want their kids out in, but they want to be able to have their offices open or their shops open or get the conveniences that they're used to. And it's this level of expectation that I think was not there maybe, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
And getting a fleet of salt and plow trucks out on the roads in time for school after or during a winter storm, I mean, that does seem like a real hefty logistical challenge. But before that snow falls, there's usually a forecast, and those are sometimes off by several inches. So how does the Oakland County Road Commission take these forecasts into account and the fact that, people are more and more wanting to get on the roads and live a faster life?
Well, that's a great question. And we do watch the forecasts very closely. We have our own weather forecasting services that we contract with. But even, all of those services are often wrong about not only the quantity of snow, but the timing of the snow. And the timing is critical because if we have our drivers, if it's after hours and our drivers have to come from home to the garage, get in the truck and get out on the road, we have to assume it's going to be at about an hour from the point where we call them. They, get up out of their beds at home, leave their families and their dogs and everything, jump in their cars, get to the garage they work at, which, could be half an hour or more away, get in their trucks, get the trucks fired up and get on the road. It's got to be at least an hour. So trying to get that timing just right, because the ideal situation is they are hitting the roads just as the snowflakes are falling and they're putting down that salt just at the right moment. If we don't do that, if we get out too early, it costs us about $35,000 an hour to run with all of our trucks out, and if we do that with no snow falling down, that's wasted money. If we're too late, we get out, then the roads could start icing up before we have a chance to put the salt down, and that's a safety issue, and we don't want that either. So that timing is the hardest challenge we have when it comes to getting the people out at the right moment.
Do you have a lot of people who are on call? And this also has me thinking as well, Craig, about a low snow year and how that affects a lot of the folks that we depend on to plow the roads. I mean, right now they're very busy, but on a low snow year, that I think would cause some other complications for people trying to make a living too.
Oh, it certainly does. And yes, all of our drivers, all of the supervision in the garages, all of our mechanics are on call 24/7 this time of year, and they they watch the weather because they understand what implications it has for them. But yeah, overtime, frankly, is a big part of their incomes, and it fluctuates from year to year. In those years when there isn't much snow, it definitely does, and we hear that it impacts their vacations that summer or their gifts for their children or things like that. It's a real factor in their lives.
And how many people does the road commission work with, and how much equipment?
So when we have what we call full run coverage, which is all the available orange trucks out, that's 109 trucks, one driver per truck, a supervisor in all 6 of our garages, a mechanic in all 6 of our garages, sometimes mechanics in our central garage as well. So, we're talking 150, 175 people for our full run coverage. Then we can also add in 18 or 19 road graders, which are the big pieces of equipment we use to grade the gravel roads in the summer. We use those to plow heavy snow in the winter. So we add 18 or 19 of those in. We can add in 18 heavy-duty pickup trucks to help clear out the turnarounds, say on Woodward Avenue or Telegraph Road, Big Beaver. So maybe 200 people total when we've got everything running at full bore. And then there's, another 75 to 100 people on call during that time waiting to fill in the next shift, because we can often run, round the clock for multiple days in a row, and you need to be able to replace people, have new drivers come in, new supervisors come in, new mechanics come in, and be able to keep that system up and running for sometimes days on end. I mean, right now we've been out running almost round the clock since Wednesday last week.
Wow, this is quite an operation. Craig, one thing you mentioned, the road graders. Is that like a truck that chisels down the ice?
No, it's a big kind of a tractor type piece of equipment with a large blade under the middle section of the body, and it can push. It's got a whole lot of torque, so it can push a whole lot of heavy snow. So we put those out on the back roads when we get more than 6 inches of snow, and they're very effective at moving a lot of snow out of the way quickly. A lot more torque, for example, than a traditional dump truck or pickup truck.
You're listening to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Our guest is Craig Bryson, Senior Manager of Communications for the Oakland County Roads Commission. We're talking about how the roads get cleared of snow and ice and how important road conditions are when it comes to snow days. And does it seem like snow days are called too easily nowadays? The number is 313-577-1019. Now, Craig, it would be nice if all the roads could be cleared at the same time, but that's not how it works. We have a lot of roads in Southeast Michigan and a lot of lanes. So what roads get plowed first and why?
Right. And we've got, just as a point of reference, we've got the largest county road system in Oakland County in the state. Plus, we maintain all the state highways. So that's about 3,000 miles of roads just in Oakland County. So our priority system is based on safety. The roads with the most traffic moving at the highest speeds have to be our top priority, because those are the ones where you could have the most dangerous crashes if we don't get them. So we get out and focus on those roads first. That's all the freeways. That's the major roads that we maintain for MDOT, like Woodward and Telegraph. It's the main county roads, Orchard Lake Road, Big Beaver Road, Southfield Road, the major mile roads, 12-mile road, 14-mile road, et cetera. And we stay on those until they're clean, and then we work down by traffic volume primarily. And at the bottom of that list, unfortunately, is subdivision roads, where we have the least amount of traffic moving at the slowest speeds. And people sometimes, understandably get upset that they can't get out of their subdivisions yet. And we empathize with that, and we sympathize. But if you can get out of your subdivision, but you can't go anywhere on the main roads, it's not going to do you any good. and we don't want you to get out of the main roads and then get in a crash because the main roads haven't been salted and plowed. So that is our priority system. And, as a point of reference, again, just today we're starting to get into the subdivisions after this most recent snow, and it'll take us probably a couple of days. We've got about 1,500 miles of subdivision roads under our jurisdiction alone, and it takes a while to clear all those roads.
And can you talk a little bit about how the responsibility to clear the roads is divided between the city, the state, and the county?
Absolutely. So in Michigan, there's 3 levels of road jurisdiction. There's the state highways that are under the jurisdiction of the Michigan Department of Transportation. And that's all the I, M, and US routes like I-75, I-696, M59, Woodward Avenue is M1, Telegraph is US 24, Lapeer Road is M24. In Oakland County, we serve as a contractor to the state. So the state pays us to maintain all those county roads, 230 miles of county roads in the county. Then there are the county roads, which are all of the roads in townships that are not state roads. Townships by law cannot have road jurisdiction. So those are all our roads. Cities and villages, we split the roads. All of the local neighborhood subdivision roads are under jurisdiction of the cities and villages. And depending on the city, we have some of the main roads. And which ones we have depends on the negotiations that took place when the communities were incorporated. In some cases, like the city of Pontiac was incorporated before the Road Commission was created in 1913.
Wow.
So we have no roads within the city of Pontiac and one road that's a border road. But newer cities like Troy, Rochester Hills that were incorporated in the 60s and 70s, we have a lot more of the main roads. So there's about equal number of roads under the jurisdiction of cities and villages countywide and the jurisdiction of the Road Commission countywide. Both of us have about 2,700 miles of roads.
So we're going to try to get through this really quickly. Do superintendents ever communicate directly with the Oakland County Road Commission?
They do. I've had some of them call me. Frankly, we sort of encourage them not to. We're happy to tell them what we know and what we're doing, but because we're not meteorologists and because the weather can change, we're a little bit leery of encouraging them to make decisions on what we say because the weather could change and they come back and say, well, you said the roads are going to be clear, and they're not because a storm developed that wasn't forecast. So we're happy to share with them what we are doing, but we don't like to give any advice on when or if they should close schools.
And my last question to you, previously before here, I was a traffic reporter for a few years. And one of the things that the plow truck drivers would do often is call into the station and talk to us about the way the roads were, the conditions, the way the drivers were behaving. What are some of the tips that you're giving folks who are driving around the salt trucks and ways to behave when they're driving around the salt trucks?
Yeah, one of the things that I hear so often from our drivers is that people are just driving too fast for conditions. I mean, almost every day we've got somebody either almost hitting one of our trucks or hitting one of our trucks, and they just are driving too fast for conditions. And you just got to, when it's snowy out, I don't care if you have a four-wheel drive, you got to slow down. That four-wheel drive is not going to prevent your vehicle from stopping or slowing down. It may help give you traction, but slow down. And unfortunately, when a vehicle hits one of our trucks are made of solid steel. They're rarely hurt too significantly, but a car can be severely damaged and a driver can be significantly injured by running into one of our trucks. So please slow down and back off. The state law says you have to stay 200 feet back from an operating snowplow these days, 20 feet back when it stops in an intersection, and that is for the protection of the motorists, not for our drivers. So please do that.
Craig Bryson is the Senior Manager of Communications for the Oakland County Roads Commission. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro, Craig.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Coming up, a school superintendent explains all the thinking that goes into calling a snow day. And we want to hear from you. Does it seem like snow days are called too easily these days? 313-577-1019. This is the Metro on WDET. Stay with us. to the Metro on WDET, Detroit Public Radio. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. And kids love them, adults, not so much. There are a lot of factors that school administrators consider before they call a snow day. It's a complex decision-making process. Superintendents are thinking about children waiting outside for buses in the frigid cold, and if those buses will even show up. On the other hand, they're worried about disrupting the learning process and the resources students won't get when they miss even one day of school. To demystify the process, Robin sat down with Dr. Alina Zachary Ross. She's the superintendent of Ypsilanti Community Schools. Robin began by discussing with her how some students engage with special rituals to try and conjure snow days.
Absolutely. I hear of all types of rituals happening, including people putting ice in the toilet and flushing it down so that there might be snow days called. People wear pajamas. People eat certain things, all types of things in hopes that I might call a snow day the night before or early in the morning. Yes, indeed. There are so many rituals that I hear about on a constant basis.
If I had known about these rituals when I was a kid, you better believe I would have been doing them too. What I did was just pray. I just clasped my hands ever so tightly together and said, please, please, please let me have a snow day tomorrow. And when I would learn that those prayers had been heard, it was just like jumping up with joy and jubilation and running outside to go and see just how much snow had arrived. But we know that it actually means that there's a lot of thought that goes into this from an administrator's standpoint. And so that's what I want to talk about. Ypsilanti Community Schools has a severe weather closing policy. The district website says any day with temperatures that hit 20 below zero will warrant a closure. Plus, severe weather, road conditions, or building mechanical problems. So let's talk about the severe weather and road conditions part of that equation. How is a decision to call a snow day made, aside from all those rituals and that magic juju that is somehow seeping into your subconscious?
Absolutely. You know, there are so many conditions, and it is definitely quite complicated because we are in the people business. So there's not just one condition. We look at several factors, including obviously our buildings. We look at the snow, and it's actually not just that negative 20 degrees. We put that on there, but obviously we're in Michigan. So it's that real feel, right? So we don't want our students outside and it's negative 20 degrees, but it feels even colder. So if our students are going to be outside and they tell us that it's going to, if they're standing out there and the possibility of our students experiencing being frostbitten, and it's cold and it's icy, and we know that the conditions might warrant there being icy conditions with our bus driver shortages, perhaps. So we look at staffing of the day, and it might be delays for them possibly standing outside longer. That's a condition. So bus driver shortages, number one. We also look at the fog conditions, because if there's going to be fogginess with that driver shortage and the wind chills, that's a condition. We also look at how many days in a row the wind chill has been low. You know, those are conditions as well. So there's a myriad of reasons why there might be days of inclement weather that we're calling. So, people think that we take it lightly. Oftentimes as well, before we had a lot of neighborhood teachers who lived close by. But now we have teachers who drive in quite a distance, and if there's going to be a shortage of even staff members who won't be there to greet our students, that's a condition. And many of our staff members also have children themselves, and if they have to be home, and we are looking at a shortage of the number of staff members who will be there to teach in the district.
If I may jump in, Dr. Zachary Ross, I'm hearing a lot of factors here. I'm hearing health and safety. I'm hearing staffing and transportation and roads. A lot of different things that you have to weigh at the same time. And it has me also wondering about timing, because that seems like a crucial factor in these decisions too. For example, when a storm will hit, how long it will last for, when it will end, how long it'll take to plow the roads, and then giving parents enough time to plan as well. Could you talk about timing?
Timing is everything. On one hand, it's great that we know so far in advance so that we can really make those decisions earlier, and we can decide about closing school the night before. And on the other hand, the information isn't always accurate. So people wonder, like, you've closed schools and now we really shouldn't have. And so they really criticize because we've made that decision. Yet we really do err, as you said earlier, on the side of student safety. We really want to make sure that when we're making these decisions, we're making the decisions based off of student safety first, and then we really are considering all of our staff, as we know that it's important for them to be safe as they're coming to work as well. And so just really trying to make the best decision, considering all of the factors, and really student safety and staff safety is really at the forefront. And then really wanting them, all of them, our students, to come to school. Like, that is, we do, our mindset and heart set is that we want our students to come to school, because for districts like Ypsilanti Community Schools, students need to be in school. For one, is for them to learn, and two, many of them, they get their source of food at school. They get a breakfast at school. They get lunch at school. If I
could jump in, forgive me again, but I want to stay on this topic for a moment. The fact that schools have become crucial resource hubs for a lot of students, and
absolutely,
yeah, and we know that a lot of students are relying on, their families are relying on schools as a place for them to get those breakfasts and lunches. And so that is something you have to take into account too, is that this means that kids aren't going to get those meals. And so how long have you been a superintendent, and how has this changed when it comes to how you weigh the factors?
Yeah, I've been a superintendent for 13 years, and so I take it seriously. If we're going to close school, it has to be for it has to be a serious reason. Like, I understand that the parents depend on us. They're going to miss work. They have to make alternate arrangements for care, for feeding their child, for lots of things. It changes fundamentally their day. And so I understand, by making this decision, it's going to impact the family tremendously.
What about education disruption? How does a snow day affect learning? You did mention that already as being something that you're definitely taking into consideration. It's got me thinking about how many snow days you can call before it really starts to disrupt the school year and you have to start tacking on days at the end of the year.
Yeah, so we have 6 days that are able to be forgiven before we have to the Michigan Department of Education to ask for more, and so that's what they consider to be more, to be a disruption. And so we know that more than 6 days, then our students are already, many of them are absent more on their own. So we really try to limit that. We understand, again, certain parts of Michigan have had more days. And so, again, we think about that and try to limit those numbers of days and try to think about alternative ways to make up that time in terms of we look at extended school year opportunities and ways to mitigate how that's impacting our instruction. Our educators are always being very creative, and I really appreciate that we have some gifted educators in Michigan who really know how to make up the time and who really spend a lot of hours with their students on things like Google Classroom and reach out to our scholars even on those inclement weather days and write them. I've seen them on Facebook and say, you can read this book, or they write to them in Google Classrooms even when they're not in school on those days to try to encourage them to still become engaged.
An educator's job is just never done. I mean, we're talking about some really dedicated folks here who will do what is necessary to try and keep kids on track. What are the financial considerations you have to make when judging whether or not to call a snow day?
Well, if we have to make up those days, we know that will cause us to lose funds, because even when we're not in school, we have staff who still come in. We are still paying our staff members, and we have to come in and still maintain our building. So it's costing the district, costing taxpayers, as well as adding additional funds. And so we understand that this is at a cost. And so it's important to limit those days. But again, there's no cost on student and staff lives. And so we've seen what happens when we have buses turnover and when we have students and staff and accidents. And so there's no price on student and staff safety. And so, those are the things that we think about and talk about when we're on those calls, because when we're making the decisions to close schools, every county I know has all the superintendents have make the calls together, usually the night before, or we're in group calls, and we a lot of times those are the collaborative decisions we're making, and we talk about the fact that we've seen bus accidents, and we've seen high school students driving, and the accidents that they have as novice drivers. Those things we don't forget.
Are there times when you're having those calls where there's a real divide between superintendents and the calls end up going for much longer than maybe you'd like or anticipate because it's hard to come to a consensus?
They always are like that. They really are. And especially because across counties, there are different conditions. Even where I am in Washtenaw County, we're more into the city, and you have districts like Manchester that are farther out, and so the conditions might be different. So, oftentimes we'll pair up, and we might not close an entire county. Some parts of the county might close, and other parts might not, because the road conditions might be different depending on if other people have back roads that are that are slippery because their roads aren't salted as well, and or others have been have been conditioned in better condition, but oftentimes the debate will start very early in the week if we're expecting snow later in the week, and they'll say what predictions there might be, and we'll hear about what other counties are doing even and why. There's always the debate of why this might be so. And they become very interesting. People will even give the charts of what the weather personnel are saying. So they're very, very, very interesting. They should be on the debate team in their high school.
Are you all bringing on like a meteorologist onto these calls? Is there anyone who is studying the weather who's a part of the calls?
No, they just usually bring the charts. They're charts that have been given for our areas, and what the predictions are, and so those are certainly shared amongst the cause.
Okay, so everyone is bringing the forecast that they've gotten from the National Weather Service, let's say, and they've zoomed in on their particular area where their school is or where their district is.
Correct.
My last question for you, Dr. Alina Zachary-Ross, is what do you do on snow days?
On snow days, we spend the entire day rescheduling. So these calls for us, the last call started at 3:50 a.m., and we are usually rescheduling, especially athletics, until the evening. So unfortunately, we are typically working until 8 or 9 p.m. still, because our external meetings are still going on, and especially our internal, but it causes quite a bit of disruption. It's usually a longer day because we do our normal work day plus reschedule everything that was supposed to happen that day.
So snow days may be a lot of fun for some kids, but for adults, and especially those working in education, it tends to mean a lot more work.
Yes, unfortunately.
Dr. Alina Zachary-Ross is the superintendent of Ypsilanti Community Schools. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for having me. I hope people understand that it's safety first, but then again, we really want our scholars to be in school every day, all day.
This is the Metro and our forecast for the next segment. More snow days, conversations, and a question. Is the weather getting harder to predict? We'll ask a climatologist.
And we want to hear from you. Does it seem like snow days are called too easily? 313-577-1019. This is the Metro on WDET. Stay with us. Back to the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. And snow days are a magical moment for a kid. You wake up, you see a bunch of snow outside, and you are excited. Your parents turn on the local news, and you see your school district's name pop up on the school's closing list. But nowadays, that nostalgic snowy day moment feels a little different. School days seem to be called before a storm even hits. On some snow days, there are only a few inches of snow, so we would love to hear from you. Does it seem like snow days are called too easily nowadays? The number is 313-577-1019.
And Tia, we've talked about the roads. Yeah. We've heard from a superintendent. Now we want to zoom out way out and get an atmospheric view on the topic. So we have a climatologist with us to help us better understand weather patterns and climate change, since the forecasts we see drive the snow days we get. Richard Rood is Professor Emeritus, Climate and Space Science and Engineering at the University of Michigan. Professor Rood, thank you for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you for asking me.
So, do you remember snow days when you were a kid? How much snow was there?
Oh, absolutely. I remember them when I was a kid, and I was even in North Carolina,
Oh my.
where they were rare. So I grew up in North Carolina, but I remember one winter in particular where we had 4 or 5 storms every about a week apart, where we actually had sledding for a while, and it was a lot of fun. I also remember that winter going to school in middle of June. To make up for the time.
Much to your chagrin. I wonder if those times getting to sled and commune with the snow helped to inspire your interest in science and climate.
I'm sure they did a little bit, absolutely. Why does it snow some years and then, we go for many years, in North Carolina without snow. So I'm sure that sort of idea of the variability that you might encounter was part of motivating my interest, as well as drought. I remember a very, very severe drought when I was a kid as well.
And that makes me think we should go back to some basics and talk a little bit about the difference between climate and weather more broadly, because we're talking about snow and drought and these individual weather events, and the individual weather events are much different than what your focus is, which is climate change, right?
Well, I actually do not put as big a separation between weather and climate as some of my colleagues do. Because weather is how we feel climate. It's one of the 2 important ways of how we feel climate and climate change. So no matter what the average, the background is, we always have weather, and weather is one of the primary ways that we say get disruptions like snow days. Perhaps a formal definition of climate is 30 years average of weather. So the idea that there is an average there is an important distinction. But for me, weather is actually how we feel the climate. And so since the climate is changing, it's how we feel climate change.
Okay. So and the weather is what we're seeing in the short term, and the climate, though, is more long term.
Yes, it's the average conditions.
So we've heard this term that Michigan is a climate haven, meaning we won't be as heavily affected by extreme weather. How true is that? And is climate change affecting snowfall and the beloved snow day in Michigan?
So there 2 important questions there. I'll take the first one on the haven. So climate change will affect Michigan a lot. It's not isolated from, the impacts of global warming. And one of the big ways it is, in fact, affecting weather in Michigan right now is through the warmer Great Lakes, the lack of lake ice, which is changing in pretty fundamental senses. Lake effect snow. And winter is changing fantastically. It's the season that's changing fastest in Michigan. So that Michigan will experience a lot of changes. When people talk about it being a haven, it's partly because even though it's changing, Michigan has a lot of water. Michigan is sort of cold now, so it'll be warmer, and so it will be more appealing in a relative sense to, say, places along the southern Gulf Coast of the United States, where they're having the hurricanes, the rising sea level, the storm surge, as well as the extreme heat. So I would say, in a relative sense, Michigan will appear appealing as a place potentially to move. But I actually think it's a little bit dangerous to call it a haven, because in Asheville, North Carolina, where they had the huge flood this year, a lot of people were saying, well, we thought Asheville was a climate haven. No, it's not a haven in the sense that it's protected. The other question I've already sort of said, snow is changing a lot in Michigan right now.
So, yeah, it sounds like it's a bit dangerous to call any one place a climate haven because
Absolutely.
everywhere is affected by climate change. You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent.
And I'm Tia Graham. Our guest is Richard Rood, Professor Emeritus Climate and Space Science and Engineering at the University of Michigan. We're talking about snow days and how our changing climate is changing our weather for the long run. And we're taking your calls. Are snow days called too easily nowadays? The number is 313-577-1019. We're going to go to the phone lines right now. Melinda in Grosse Pointe. Melinda, are snow days called too easily nowadays?
I mean, it's kind of like what one of the previous callers, the superintendent, said. Safety first, I think, is really important. I have a distinct memory of being in high school and waking up. Snow day wasn't called, but there was a good couple inches on the roads. So I had to get up, get dressed, and 16-year-old me was going to try my best to drive my little four-door sedan through the snow. And they called the snow day as I walked out the back door, and I just happened to check my phone one more time.
Yes.
So I think especially for young people, those of us who have to get ourselves to school, safety first and just calling it early makes everything a lot easier. And, you know, for us teenagers who maybe don't want to have to get up at 6:45 a.m. just to go right back to bed, maybe just call it the night before. It'll be okay.
And Melinda, I just want to say, how far apart are you from your high school days?
So that probably happened about 10, 12 years ago.
All right. I was going to say, so now when we're talking and we're seeing young people on the road, what advice would you give the young folks? Like, you know, I was thinking of my 16-year-old self hitting the roadways. What advice would you give the young people on the roads?
Definitely taking it slow and following the flow of traffic, not driving like you're used to. I know most high schoolers, we would always be doing 70, 80, maybe 90 or more on the freeways. Don't do that. In general, don't do that, and especially not when it's slow. Not when it's snowing. Going as slow as you can. It's better just get there safe and maybe take the late absence to your first period class.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melinda in Grosse Pointe, for calling the Metro. And, you know, let's talk about forecasting a little bit there if we can, Professor Rood. Memory is a funny thing, and nobody is texting their friends when the meteorologist is right, okay? They're doing it when they're upset. So is forecasting any better than it used to be?
Forecasting in many ways is fantastically better than it used to be. If you look at, again, say a hurricane, our ability to predict a hurricane track and where it'll do landfall is much better than it was even 10 years ago. Storms like snowstorms have always been fairly difficult to forecast, partly because, you know, it can snow a lot, you know, one place and 10 or 15 miles away. It's not going to be as intense. And then when you have all of the lakes that are in the area, you know, of southeast Michigan and all along the Great Lakes, they change the water situation a little bit. But I do actually think one of the things we're seeing right now is that snow right at the freezing temperature is a very fickle thing, because right at the freezing temperature, if it's a little bit warm, it's rain. If it's a little bit colder, it's all snow. In between, it can be freezing rain and sleet. And what you're seeing right now is that southeast Michigan is in the area where it used to very reliably be freezing, but it is no longer in January and February reliably freezing. So I think we are losing some of our intuition, perhaps, of what the region is acting like because it's warming. You're seeing the lake effect snow, which is, you know, really a little more on the south side of Erie Lake Erie's and Lake Ontario, you're actually starting to see a transition of that more to rain.
Yeah.
Whereas still to the north on Huron and Michigan and Superior, you're still seeing it as snow. So you're seeing that freezing line move.
Professor, I would love, we're going to definitely talk with you in the future about the climate, the weather, and everything that's happening right now. Richard Root is Professor Emeritus Climate and Space Science and Engineering at the University of Michigan. Professor Root, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro today.
Thank you for asking me.
Tomorrow on the Metro, is artificial intelligence going to save local news, or will it be its downfall? We'll prompt some real human guests to find out. This is WDET-FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation.